Greetings, fellow simulator enthusiasts. This video is to introduce our upcoming course, Basic Jet Handling for Simulators. And this is specifically aimed at those of you who want to take your simulation to the next level and learn how to actually fly the aircraft using hand flying techniques that pilots have been using for decades to effectively manage and accurately control transport category jet aircraft. The techniques that we're going to teach in this course are all usable not only in simulation, but technically usable as well in the real aircraft. Many of these basic concepts are derived from a technique called pitch plus power equals performance. And basically what it is it's showing people how to use specific instrumentation for command, i.e. input to the aircraft, and then to model or to evaluate the outcomes of those commands using other instruments which we call the performance instruments. This technique was originally developed, I believe, by the United States Air Force, and it has been written about somewhat extensively in some parts of the industry over the years. I myself employed it for more than 15 years, teaching in flight simulators with especially new pilots who were the first time to get a type rating in a jet, maybe hadn't flown any other high-performance aircraft before, and they need a starting point in which to develop a mastery of how to handle the aircraft in all flight conditions. The course will be broken up into three major categories. The first of one we will discuss will be what kind of controllers do you need in order to effectively fly the aircraft using these hand flying techniques. And so some discussion on what are the best controllers to use and the importance of the type of controller. Now, it is possible to fly many of these techniques using a basic hand controller, but what you won't get is the benefit that comes along with reproducing the type of actions you would use in the real aircraft, i.e. with a control yoke, rudder pedals, and a throttle quadrant. This also helps to emphasize the fact that quality controllers also will help you to polish your skill sets and fly the aircraft very precisely. Today's simulation has evolved tremendously from the days I first discovered simulation back in the early 1980s. And at that time, basically we had for desktop simulation was the Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in that early version, there wasn't a lot of fidelity. There wasn't a lot you could do, but the promise of simulation was obvious. And over the years, it has risen to such a level of sophistication that we can accurately model flying the aircraft very similarly to the level D simulators that are used by professionals in order to train pilots to fly and attain a type rating in a specific jet. Sitting behind me here is, of course, a cockpit of a Boeing 737 NG simulator. This is my particular one that I'm developing, and I never would have gotten into this if it wasn't for the level of sophistication that we now have. I've been involved in the Zibo Mod 737 NG, or the 737 800X as it's well known, for about 7 years now, helping Zibo develop this thing. He is an absolute genius when it comes to developing all of the modeling. Where I have come in is to assist with creating a flight model that flies realistically. I have about 17,000 hours in transport category jet aircraft, from small business jets, Citations, various Falcons, the Boeing 727, the Boeing 747. I started my career as a flight engineer in a DC-8. Before that, I actually was a flight engineer for the U.S. Air Force in C-141 Starlifters. Over that time, flying all these various types of jet aircraft with different configurations, 2-engine aircraft, 3-engine aircraft, 4-engine aircraft, there are commonalities between all of them. When these aircraft are certified, they have to meet certain standards of both performance and for handling qualities. And the more I understand about handling qualities that are shared between these different aircraft, I came to the understanding that with good, sound, basic technique and consistent use of basic principles, that we could indeed develop the ability to just jump into any simulator right off the bat and effectively fly it and manage it. That doesn't mean that we're ready to get a type rating in it, but what it does is prepare us for the ability to learn in a simulator environment if we actually can handle the aircraft instinctively, and then that allows us to open our world up, so to speak, increase our situation, position awareness, and absorb the training environment that allows us to move forward and get a type rating in a specific large jet aircraft, which is of course required in order to fly that aircraft as a pilot in command. So as discussed, the first phase of the training will be based on setting up your controllers, learning how to tune your controllers properly, and after we have looked at the controller inputs and how to set it up, we'll also, of course, discuss the best way to set up your simulation for the learning environment, what types of camera views you're going to want to use in order to best simulate the instrumentation in the aircraft, and then we will move on to the second phase. And the second phase of the training is going to focus on the basic principles of pitch plus power equals performance. We'll discuss how to use our instrumentation for command inputs, how to utilize our instrumentation for measuring performance, and then the third phase in pitch plus power equals performance is, of course, to go back and make minor adjustments to our control inputs, our commands, in order to attain the outcomes we want, i.e. maintaining altitude, maintaining heading, maintaining airspeed, and or transitions. In other words, speeding up or slowing the aircraft down, climbing the aircraft, descending, and or doing all of these while executing turns in the aircraft. So these are the very basic skill sets that every pilot, regardless of the type of aircraft they're learning to fly in. You can use the same techniques in a Cessna 150 or a Cirrus or a light multi-engine piston-driven twin. These are not only applicable to jet aircraft, but specifically the techniques that we will teach address the specific characteristics of flying a jet aircraft as those differ from piston-driven aircraft. For those of you who actually have some real-world pilot experience, maybe you are learning to be a private pilot. Maybe you're a private pilot working on your commercial or your instrument ratings. Most of the techniques that we're going to employ here are instrument flying specific. In other words, we're not focused on looking outside the airplane in order to maintain attitude control like we would as a private pilot student. We're focused on using the instruments to very accurately predict the flight path of the aircraft and control it. And so there are some minor differences that we'll discuss. I will be using not the simulator behind me, but I will be using an actual desktop simulation so that the platform I'm teaching from is going to be as close to this kind of platform that most of you will have available to you. For those pilots in the group, I want to emphasize that this is no replacement for real-world training. However, we can polish skills in a desktop simulation that we can apply in real simulators or in real aircraft. That is one of the key takeaways from this kind of training for those who are aspiring to be real pilots, to be professional pilots. Some of the techniques we can use here are carryaways that you can actually employ when you finally get that opportunity to fly professionally and then begin your training in a full 6 degree of freedom level D simulator for the very first time. The third phase will be a few short modules to discuss and help you to understand the importance of weight and balance, center of gravity, and their role in the stability of the aircraft. And so I will present a short module on weight and balance, aircraft stability, and how that affects the way we fly the aircraft, specifically the art of trimming the aircraft. And once we have completed that module, we'll start the actual training modules. Each one of the training modules will be short exercises with first a demonstration, a discussion, and then exercises that you can accomplish in order to develop the specific skill. And we will start out with absolute basics, as though you'd never flown an aircraft before. And if you haven't developed any of these skill sets in your simulator yet, we will present them in a way that hopefully is digestible for a new simulator enthusiast who wants to learn the basics. So we'll start out with basic things like heading control, speed control, altitude control, doing speed transitions, the necessity of how to trim the aircraft, and some shortcut techniques that we can utilize in order to, again, increase our situation, position awareness, expand our world, so to speak, by using some shortcut techniques that make flying the aircraft much less work. Now, in the beginning, and when you're learning all of these basic skill sets, our brain is very saturated with the learning process. So our ability to monitor the world around us, both the cockpit, the airspace we're flying through, techniques of navigation, all of these things are a higher echelon of learning that comes after we've mastered basic aircraft handling and are comfortable with not only handling the aircraft accurately, but being able to leave it in a state when we're hand flying that I can distract myself away from the instruments themselves in order to perform small tasks, return to where the aircraft was last left attitude-wise, and find that I've not gone into a jet upset. So there are some basic techniques that we will employ for that. We'll teach these skill sets and we will try and reinforce them. Everybody gets very focused on doing good landings, but I want to emphasize that you will never be an expert at landing any aircraft until you've mastered the basics. The end of this video is to demonstrate some maneuvers that most all operators do. And a matter of fact, some of these maneuvers are required during proficiency testing. And that would be the execution of steep turns and stall series. And another aspect is jet upsets. When you can effectively fly the aircraft through a self-commanded series of steep turns and stall series, i.e., and there's 3 different regimes of stall series. We have clean en route stalls. We have either approach and or departure configuration stall series, and we have the landing configuration stall series. At most of the organizations that I was involved with in the past, a recurrent pilot, for instance, would usually be expected to fly through these series without any specific direction, and i.e., demonstrate a steep turn, go directly into a stall series, 1, 2, 3, and then after that, the examiner or instructor would usually put them into an unusual attitude scenario and expect them to recover the aircraft. When you can effectively do these maneuvers and do them within the standards, the test standards require to pass a type rating test, then you will effectively have mastered the basics that we have referred to. So I think we'll start out with a demonstration of those maneuvers. All training will be done in standard day conditions with standard airport temperatures, 2992 or 1013 millibars. We'll do the stalls and the steep turns at 10,000 feet. Notice that the angle of attack gauge is in view, and we'll be using that throughout the training. Specifically to aid in the learning process for the maneuvers, we will have the flight director and the autopilot off throughout the training process.
Bank angle.
It's important to note that most of your focus should be placed 90% on pitch and roll attitudes. Only occasionally, maybe every 4 or 5 seconds, refer to your airspeed and your altitude to verify. Boeing recommends, as in most jets, not to use pitch trim during the turn. The problem is that when you use pitch trim during roll reversal, you're more than likely going to experience a severe pitch up in the aircraft.
Bank angle. Bank angle.
When cross-checking your airspeed, if it is stable and within 5 knots of target speed, don't bother to change thrust. If the airspeed is trending towards your 10-knot limit, then make a small reduction or increase as required in thrust, but avoid large changes. Once the steep turn procedure is complete, we will bring the thrust smoothly to idle and slow to minimum maneuvering speed to proceed directly in to a clean stall straight ahead. The use of speed brakes during the deceleration to minimum maneuvering is not required, but it's a great maneuver to help us practice our pitch and altitude control. Remember to continue trimming as we slow the aircraft to stall speed. This reproduces the stick forces that would be likely experienced during a stall recovery. When the first indication of a stall is encountered, it's important to ensure that the wings are rolled to level, the nose is pitched down, and ensure that the speed brakes are stowed. Smoothly advance the thrust levers to go around thrust. It's important to emphasize that you should not do this too quickly, as it could cause a pitch-up moment or difficulty in bringing the nose down.
Airspeed low. 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 Airspeed low.
It is worth noting here that before beginning the maneuvers, I failed to reset the maximum thrust limit to the go-around power and to reset my bug speeds. Without a first officer in the other seat, it is much more higher workload to do these things during the maneuvers. Without a monitoring pilot in the other seat, I would recommend, between maneuvers, putting the autopilot on momentarily so that you can do any changes or setups required. During deceleration for the approach to landing stall, extend the flaps on schedule. When attaining flaps 5 speed, put the gear down and select flaps 15. Set the target thrust to N1 60%, and upon reaching flaps 15 maneuvering speed, smoothly roll the aircraft into a left or right bank of 20 to 25 degrees. And trim, trim, trim while sloping. It's important to note that when the nose is lowered to 5 degrees during the stall recovery, it's also important to immediately start trimming nose down
and aggressively continue to trim until stick forces are relieved. This will become even more evident an issue during the approach to landing stalls. The landing stall will be performed straight ahead with flaps set to 30 and N1 set to 60%. The recovery process is similar to the previous stall. Most importantly, do not change the configuration until speed has been recovered to VREF plus 5 and you have climbed the aircraft back to 10,000 feet. Once the aircraft has been recovered to 10,000 feet and the aircraft has been stabilized, we will continue the recovery by using a go-around sequence to clean the aircraft up and accelerate to 250 knots. Once the aircraft has been stabilized at 250 knots and appears to be in trim, we'll note that there is a slight right turn tendency, not large, but a small one nonetheless. The cause of this turning tendency was the N1s not being fully synced. Well, that brings us to the completion of our Introduction to Basic Jet Handling video.